Welcome to Fridays in the Field, brought to you by FNBO, the great big small bank. We're back in Central Nebraska, Lexington at Creek Vineyard and Winery, and talking once again with Max McFarland. Max, when our last segment, we're getting awfully close to harvest. How has the grape crop progressed, and are you into harvest now?
The short answer is yes, we are into harvest. This heat has really kind of accelerated things. They did a little catching up. We're a little earlier than we anticipated. But yeah, we started about a week, 10 days ago. We've got most of the whites in. We still have another late season white to go. And tomorrow we start on the reds.
And we've got this beautiful red vine sitting right behind us. You can see some of that coming in. How can you tell when a grape is ready for harvest?
Well, the scientific way would be, we look at several different factors. We'll go out and gather samples, take them into the lab and test them. We're looking at pH, we're looking at Brix or sugar content, and flavor. Or the shortened version would be we send the winemaker out to the vineyard and he'll grab a grape. He'll tell us exactly when it's time to pick.
And one thing you said you've noticed here on these red grapes, or ones that'll go into the red wine side of things, that you've seen a little bit heavier bird population starting to move into the area. Yeah. Does that give you any indication that things are getting close?
It certainly does. You know, you start to see the birds begin to show up just when these grapes hit what's called veraison, and that's when the white grapes all the grapes are green, but when they start to soften and turn a yellow gold, they're sugaring up, getting sweeter. The red ones, same way. When they start to turn from green to red and start to soften, they're getting sweet, and you can tell. I tell people it's around here it's a lot like raccoons and sweet corn. They're into it about 2 weeks before it's ready to be picked. But you certainly can tell just by the sheer pressure of the birds. Now that we've got the whites out, the bird pressure on the reds are really getting intense, and so we're going to step that up and pick a little earlier.
When it comes to the grape harvest itself, there are machinery available to help mechanically harvest, but Max Creek chooses to still do things by hand. Is it more from a cost-benefit analysis, or is it from the purity of the product at the end?
It's really both. Those machines are very costly, but they work quite well when they're set right and what have you. And you know, you need to have a certain amount of acres to be able to justify that kind of thing. The other side of that is, depending on the kind of wine that the winemaker wants to make, the whole idea of the amount of time of skin contact with the juice itself has to be very tightly controlled. And when the machine picks those and macerates the grapes too much, and then it might be hours before they arrive at the winery, the skin juice contact is way longer than what we like it to be, and so we can control that quality much, much better when it comes in by hand.
How quickly is the process going from the field back before it'll be in a vat turning into wine at the winery?
Well, we will have pickers out here in the parking lot when it's dark in the morning, waiting to go, and just as soon as it's light enough to see what they're doing, they'll start in the coolness of the morning. And typically we would be finished picking whatever variety we're working on that day probably by no later than maybe noon. We would have those grapes in. We would already be crushing the first early ones coming in, finish up the others by early afternoon. The juice will be in the tank chilling down by 3 o'clock.
Wow, that is truly impressive just how quickly the whole process happens. When it comes to that winery site, how important is the late summer, early fall time frame for tourist attraction and folks visiting the winery?
Well, it's a very fun time. You know, you kind of get into that fall mood. You know, kids are back in school. We're listening to the high school band when we're out here crushing grapes in the morning. You know, it's harvest time. And the events and special things that we do change a little bit to more weekends and that sort of thing, but it's a very popular time for tourists to be out and about. They love experiencing the fall, the coolness out on the creek. And so we get incredibly busy. We were just going over that. I had a meeting the other morning, and September's just jammed full of all sorts of things. Then we get into October and Mactoberfest, and all of a sudden we're into November and Christmas on the Creek, and we're into the holidays. So it's jam-packed.
That is Max McFarland of Max Creek Winery and Vineyard here near Lexington, Nebraska. It's Fridays in the Field, brought to you by FNBO, the Great Big Small Bank.